All right, right on. Let's get rolling. It's 10:30, and I want to honor your time, and we want to get out of here at 10:45. Let's pray. God, thank you so much. We had a little bit of time to talk about leaders and building up leaders, and be with this sesh that we get your wisdom out of it in order to bring something actionable back that we can do. And thank you for the opportunity we have to be together, learn from each other, and crank it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, welcome. And so I'm going to start a little bit about myself. I'm Steve Johnson, director of the Lutheran Valley Retreat. I've been there for about 18 years. The only reason I know that is because we moved after my first son was born, and he's 18. All right, that's it. Thanks for laughing. If I don't make you laugh, I have failed as a leader. So, because you don't have to overdo it, though. It's all right.
He hated you, so watch out.
I know. No.
I heard him say that.
Well, see, that's what I said. Everybody takes it literally. But I do mention them. All right, that's me. My family, there's some pictures coming up. Married for over 18 years. And I have 4 boys. We'll get the pictures in just a second. Sam, Mace, Joe, and then midlife crisis baby Bodie. Always recommend a motorcycle when you get that age. Just saying. All right, baby's great, love him, but motorcycle's a lot cheaper. And I can fix a motorcycle. LVR, my passion. So I grew up always wanting to do outdoor ministry at camp. The road I went there is doing the DCE track through Concordia, Chicago, and then ended up at LVR. There's a short story there. My passion is actually pouring into people, pouring into anyone I see, hospitality, all those good terms like that, and using outdoor ministry to do it. And so what we've come to learn over the years is leadership has been pretty important in creating leaders. Oh, you get to see that again. All right, so there's my one of the things that I've learned about leadership and where I'm at is be who you say you are. All right, so we do this. So top right corner is Moab mountain biking. All right, that's Porcupine Rim if you've ever been out there. Pretty slick. Just want you to know I made it without injuring myself, which is pretty awesome. It's one of the harder, it's 14 miles of downhill. This is us rock climbing this fall. This is my boys doing a 5K over Thanksgiving. And this is us on the big sand hill outside of Moab. My goal is always to get outside in some way with them once a month. Rock climbing, mountain biking, whatever. And so, because I am who I say I am. I love doing these things. I love getting outdoors. We're heading to Moab in a week. 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Spring break. What is it? February still? 4 weeks. And we got the mountain bikes going. We got the rock climbing stuff going to be packed up as well. So that's one of the things. This is, my son Sam. This is an Eagle Rock. This is another way to say, hey, we do some cool stuff. Eagle Rock out of camp. He was 10 years old at this time, and usually we do this for high schoolers. He climbed it. There is a video. I don't know how to do it because I hate. Oh, see? So yeah, he nailed it. Not sure how he did it, but he's 18 now. He's taller than me, so this is no problem. But so that's him. This is midlife crisis baby when he was 3. He's 5 now, which is super cool, but this is his attitude, and it still is. See, this is where I get backwards. So he's just like already thinking he's Thor, all right? And he just smash, loves it. Anyway, that's Bodie, yeah. He's 5 now, but he still has some cool stuff. How do I find leadership? I have this picture of Bodie up here. This is his first time on a rope climb that we did last year at 4 years old. It's not very tall. Obviously, he didn't make the whole thing. You can see the rope is just to that first anchor up there. So he got about 15 feet off the ground. All my boys have started rock climbing at 4, snowboarding at 4, mountain biking as soon as they can balance. And running is one of the more recent things they do, which I can't join them in right now. We'll get to that in a sec. So this is a thing I came up with after looking at leaders, all right? Defining leadership as a person who does not only do their best all the time, but also works to bring the best out of everyone they come in contact with. All right, and we'll define the best. The best at what? All right, we'll spend a little bit of time on that. we'll spend a little bit of time on that because the best at what? And understanding leaders, we're going to fail. We're going to screw up. We all know that. And then I do have to check myself before forming leaders. That means be who you say you are. I've had too many leaders just try to preach leadership, but don't lead a disciplined life over here. And that not leading that disciplined life is eventually that leader's going to fall. They're going to make a mistake so drastic that they're going to everything that they've said in the past is going to be void. Jeremy and I walked through a few scenarios in Colorado, and with pastor leaders, and it is funny because the first thing they say is, "Well, wasn't he just preaching on family and couldn't love his wife, or wasn't he just preaching on living this life, but over here he struggled with alcohol and anger?" It was just like, so just check yourself. If you have those hang-ups like that, get help. All right? It doesn't mean hide it. All right? If you hide it, it's eventually going to come out. And it's important that your students look at you with integrity. Because if I can't live this life, then if I'm not who I say I am, then they won't. They'll pick up on that quicker than us. So, all right. Work and strengths. I spent probably, how old am I? 6. I spent after college, they're like, develop your weaknesses. You need to develop your weaknesses. That's actually, you should know better than that, but I'm going to point the obvious. Work in your strengths, students should work in their strengths. If you're developing weaknesses, you're wasting your time, all right? If you're sitting there like, oh my gosh, we need an accountant, but this person's good with people, let's have them doing the accountant work, probably not a good idea, right? It's just work in your strengths. And you can there's lots of tools out there, you know them, but just that reminder, again, to work in strengths. So the reason I had the picture of Bodie here then is off the first quote, all right? So I'm trying at this point in time as his belayer, while I'm taking the picture, by the way. That takes talent. Because he wouldn't let anyone else belay him. So my job at this point in time is to bring out his best. All right? And sometimes in this scenario, it meant down here he was done at the bottom. He was like, "Man, Dad, I'm done." And I go, "Okay, take one more step." And then he goes, "Maybe." He takes one more step. And then take one more step, gets to where he is. And the next step, the goal was ultimately to get to the top of the anchor because he said that at the bottom. So my job then was to get him to the top of the anchor one step at a time, setting those little mini goals, and he did it. He's pretty solid now as a climber. The thing that scares you as a parent is when they become fearless. Just saying. So, all right. All right, young leaders, my journey. So I have had a journey. Jeremy's actually been with me on a lot of the journey. In fact, he got tired of me coming into his office and say, "Hey, we got to talk about this." And he's like, "No, yeah, I got time." He didn't really. And if he was, there's a slide in here that I explain that a lot of times I had to, in order to tell Jeremy my crazy ideas, I had to hunt him down in the church. I found him every time. All right. So you can't hide from me. Action, learning, influence, basically asking questions. Going to people smarter than me and asking a bunch of questions. All right. What questions am I asking? Never feeling like I own it, I know it, but knowing I need to get into this area. So by that meaning, I'm not an expert. I'm learning every time. I'm changing a lot of things at LVR for 2023 because of this. We're going to do everything we do. Everything we want to do, we're going to work on developing leaders. And this is some of the processes that led to it. Action learning is simply when people who did some research on how the smartest people in the world learn. This is a summary, you can look it up. And they're like, how did the smartest people in the world learn? And they were shocked when you get a room of people who are incredibly intelligent, all they do is ask questions of each other. They don't sit there and try to preach at. They don't sit there and say I'm an expert. They ask questions. And I'm not the greatest question asker, but I'm learning from that, and just ask questions. I'm not an expert, ask questions. So that's my thing to you. We are a room of professionals. We're going to treat each other that way and ask questions. If I don't have the answer, somebody here probably might. So it's pretty cool. The jog. So my son Sam, who you saw in the picture, I was jogging one day. He and I were jogging, and I was out there with him. I'm just running, before my foot fell off, literally, figuratively, whatever. So I'm on this jog with my son, and I'm just like, why am I out here with him? This is stupid. It's 5:30 in the morning. We're out here jogging. And the purpose was that he was wanting, at that point in time, he wanted to be on this cool soccer team. And I was like, but this kid is not exercising at all. You know, and even now at 18, I can't get the kid to lift weights for anything. But he's strong, he's big. So we're jogging, and then I was like, he was running some hills, and I was timing him, you know, because I didn't have to run him then. Go! So he, as he's running, I'm like, why am I doing this? And me as a parent, actually a strength and conditioning guy now, I wanted to give him the best chance to do his best. So I was giving him tools to be his best. And that was running right form, lifting the right form. And, and the other thing that we do, all my children, and Bodhi's actually started every time I do them, we have a goal of 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 30 pull-ups a day. And I'm in 100 sit-ups, 100 push-ups today, and I can't find a place to do pull-ups yet. So I'll be out in the playground later. But again, be who I say I am, and that's what I try to do every day. Because if I'm asking my kids to do it, you don't have to do it every time. Just know that you've either done it or you know that, you know what I mean, walk alongside them. So anyway, Joe is he's my third oldest. Anyway, so give him the best chance. I can keep talking. Atheist friends. I had two friends in high school who I hated because they were the Christian beater guys, right? Both of them, one was a Lutheran, actually one was a Baptist. They were the guys who were like, hey, come in the youth group tonight? Hey, you want to go on this mission trip? Hey, they were the dudes all over the place that were just like, man, you need to be a part of this. And the Baptist side friend was always about how many kids could he get to convert to Christianity in high school. I was a Christian through high school. I just was highly involved with athletics, so I didn't do the youth ministry stuff. I was that kid you could never get to come to youth group. So, but these guys were. They go to college, and both of them lose their faith. Both of them. Both of them are hard atheists now. Rationalization from college professors and whatever environment they were in college, and they both fell away. I've had conversations with one of them, and it was around the aspect of why does this good God allow this? If God is so good, ... couldn't rationalize that. And then with so much proof, which we all know that there's not proof for evolution, otherwise dinosaurs would not have soft tissue. Sorry. Just my little thing. But it can be very convincing. And so there's a lot of things going on there. But that conversation of these guys got people to go, and they fell away from their faith. Holy crap. Very shocking to me. Very shocking to me. But my one atheist friend, the conversation ended when I go, I appreciate what you're saying, but the one thing I can't grasp about, life without a God is, where does morality come from? Just so you know. There's no reason for morality then. Absolutely none. And he couldn't answer that. But and then conversation stopped, unfortunately. My agnostic friend grew up in the church, daughter of a pastor, and the pastor beat her, as a daughter. And so she knew there's a God, but why would this happen? Why the church is not good? So I'm not saying that it's just, these things are out there. These stories are out there, and kids are hearing them, and these are things as leaders we got to address. At least she's coming back into a church. My wife is actually dealing with this friend, because I don't, again, good boundaries. But so having to reconcile a good God, but my dad still beats me, and he's a pastor. So be who you say you are. And if you have a struggle with it, get help. I'm not the person to help you. Mega youth leader interview, I don't remember that, sorry. That was just, things that people are doing to keep kids in their faith, but also realizing that at the end of the day, we only have so long with these students, and they have to be ready to face whatever's coming at them. All right. Already Gone study. Anybody familiar with that one? All right. It's early. It's old, but it still rings true today. That's the study that after 8th grade, we lose 50%. We have 100 kids. At 8th grade, you lose 50% after confirmation after 8th grade, and then you lose another 50% after high school, then about another 25% through college. So how many after, starting with 100 kids, how many you got left? Do the math, 50, 25, we're down to under 20 kids starting with 100. Granted, it may not be your church, that's what I always say, but it's being aware of these things and really addressing. And one of the things I like about this conference is we come for encouragement, but when it comes down to the issues that we're really struggling with, everybody wants to be so much of an expert that we don't realize, and we forget to talk about, is there a better way we could do things? Is there a better way that we can really impact the lives of kids? So this is what Jeremy gets to put up with. All right? So I'll tell you that. Starting with a book, I'm working still on that one. And then conversations with Jeremy and youth leaders in our area as well, of just things like, things that keep kids in their faith. That's really what I want to be about. And camp that I work at can play a little role in that, but it's really, we all know it's the parents, all right? The parents are the biggest influence in the kid faith. We're not going to deny that. If we get the parents bringing their kids every Sunday, there's a chance they'll come to everything. If they're coming every Christmas and Easter, guess what they're going to grow up to be? Christmas, Easter kids. There are those outliers where their friend goes, come to youth group, come to youth group, come to youth group, and their parents never come to church. They'll come in, they'll meet Jeremy and say, I want to be a youth leader. And then he goes, cool, or wait, people, you influence people. You're good. And so this is my question in the action learning. In the end of our time with students or our own children, are there things we can do to give them the best chance to stay in the faith? And so I started asking my questions to a bunch of folks, action learning people who are smarter than me. So this is my big question. We have the greatest resources in Christian. When I grew up in the 80s, you know what rock bands we had in the 80s, Christian rock bands? Petra. They're not even, Stryper! Fantastic. But I didn't know they were Christian. I got to be honest with you. If you haven't listened to Stryper, To Hell with the Devil, great song. Great song. Stryper, man, I forgot about that. Yeah, but that was like, what, 2? Then there was Amy Grant was around, right? Michael W. Smith was still around.
Sandy Patty, but then she fell from grace.
Did she? Sandy Patty did? All right, well, what I'm getting at is not good, is what I'm getting at, all right? So we have, K-Love didn't exist, and all of a sudden K-Love comes around. We have Christian music all the time. But it is painting a picture, and part of the reason why I think it's still happening is that painting a picture of your life should be this way. But we realize that my life really isn't this way. And so I must be doing something wrong, which maybe we are. But I must be, you know what I mean? It's just, it should be this way. Those announcers and the DJs on K-Love are always so happy all the time and telling these positive, encouraging stories, but my life is this way, or I'm struggling with this. And, I'm not like these people. It's just that whole, I think some of that's going on. We get a glimpse, like I said, those pictures of my family are once a month. The rest of the time we fight. Just saying. I do have an 18-year-old, all right. But I can still beat them up, and then they start running away from me, and then I can't catch up. So I've known about these stats for a long time. For those of you who are DCEs down in the early 2000s, in Kansas City when Leonard Sweet presented on this stuff. And some things just haven't changed. All right, John Maxwell. Who knows John Maxwell's story? If you don't, look it up. I'm just going to give you the brief thing. He was a pastor who really struggled, and then eventually he decided, something clicked in his head, and he decided, I'm going to develop leaders. And what happened was, in his church, all he did was focusing on developing leaders, and what that turned into is an exploding church to the point where he's formed his own thing, written many books, and you can look up any of his resources. He's not the only leader out there, but it's just his story coming from the Christian background to where it's like he focused on developing leaders, and there's a significant change in his church. And so, again, that's all. Why not disciples? This is one I've talked about a long time ago. I hear a lot of church, hey, discipleship training. and even in our own church, well, this is your discipleship hour, and this is where you get to learn, and this is what it's like. The reason not disciples is because it's a tough term to define. Exactly what a disciple is. Really, if you look at the definition of it, it just simply means learner. All right? And a good leader will be a learner. A good leader will be a disciple. And that's why. It's not that I'm against having disciples of Christ. It's just, this term's hard to define. If you use the word discipleship and you can define it, or you define it a certain way, that's cool. This is just me. All right? Anyway, there you go. Good leader's disciple. Hard time defining. I just said that. Sorry. All right, I'm a little crazy, as you guys know. How do you disrupt any knock-knock joke? All right, go say knock-knock. Knock-knock. Come on in, the door's open, Yeah, right there. So this is from an article I found, so I'm going to pause here. Any questions so far? Otherwise, I'm going to give you a knock-knock joke. And I'm going to laugh so hard, and you're going to be like, what the heck, man? Because I like to make people laugh. So knock-knock.
Come on in.
There you go. All right. I didn't realize, have you ever done the knock-knock, who's there? I eat mop. Mm-hmm. And I eat mop. Who? Yeah, all right. I had a whole... That's hilarious. You haven't heard that before? No. Oh my word, I didn't until 3 weeks ago, and I laughed for 20 minutes in my office. And then I got Michaela, who's our business manager, to do it. I was like, knock, knock, who's there? I eat mop. She goes, I eat mop. Who? And just... And then I got my kids to do it, and then I got 700 kids at Lutheran High Parker to do it. It was fantastic. So good. So I kind of gave you to talk, just to kind of give you the why leadership, all right? Why focus on leadership. I believe it can make an impact. I believe focusing on leadership and leading will help kids have better tools. And there's a lot of pieces to this. So I researched some articles, Education World. These were written for a classroom. But the only one I added was the bottom one. And that's from many, many conversations with me and Jeremy about teaching to abide in Christ and what that word abide means. We're actually going to spend a little bit of time on that because that's something you can do easily with confirmation students. You can teach them to be on their own in the Word for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes before you actually do confirmation instruction with them. You can teach them and give them tools, questions to work through, a Bible passage, and they may or may not take advantage of it. We can't choose that for them. But at least take that quiet time. You can do that. And then continue that through high school. That's probably, if I had to put one in front, that would be the one in front. Yeah. So we'll go through each of these real fast because I love hearing from you all. Put them in charge, and then what tasks you have that can be given to students to lead in ministry. I have a few things that I was just, there's a lot of things. This could be in the church, it could be in the youth group, doesn't matter. And some of you guys are probably already doing this, and if you are, I hope you're seeing some benefits. But with this, you can't just put them in charge. You're walking with them in each of these things or having a mentor walk with them. All right? It's a process. Opportunities to lead should become part of your regular expectation. Affirming have parties. I actually mentioned that twice. We don't party enough. All right? And I'm not talking get together with a worship band. I'm talking having a rave. All right? I'm talking getting together and throwing some music on, a dance party, celebrating accomplishments. I can still dance with one leg, and I'll do it. All right? All right. Leadership is not just about taking on a project either. So as I was telling with Bodie, his climbing, leadership is me coming to Wade and going, Wade, have you spent your time in the Word with God today? And him coming to me and saying, hey, have you spent your quiet time? Are you abiding in God? Leadership is checking up, walking with. It's not just presenting a project. It's taking time to making sure, holding accountability to those discipline things, getting in the Word, getting in the prayer, healthy boundaries, And also I'm realizing, and I'll deal with this in my next session in men's ministry, healthy emotional releases for those of us who are older, who we get really tied, and we have someone holding us accountable to those things. My healthy emotional release right now was jogging, and I still bike, but it's getting in the weight room. I lift, and I get to coach students in strength and conditioning. But it's not for them, it's for me, because I need a healthy emotional release. But it's not about taking on projects, it's about holding each other, walking with each other is a better way to say. The poem Footprints, who's familiar with the poem Footprints? All right, what is that about? Give me a summary. We had 2 footprints in the sand, yeah.
Someone reflects on their life, they're looking back and seeing footprints in the sand, and when things were good, they see 2 sets. When things are bad, they see 1 set, and they're like, God, where were you? And God said, well, that's when I was carrying.
Yeah, I'm going to change that. I'm going to change that and say when you saw 1 footprint, so we're walking with Jesus, when there's 1 footprint, I mean, we had to take the time to walk in Jesus' footsteps. So I'm going to change that. Sorry if you like that emotional thing but it's like that's the time when he says, no, follow me, see what I do, and walk behind me. And yeah, he does carry us, I get that, but I'm just going to change that in terms of leadership. So it's a beautiful thing, but I think that walking in Jesus' footsteps is something we don't talk enough about. And he lays it out there for us because we can see the footprints. All right, show off your leadership. It's okay to let students know your leadership practices. For instance, a big change happened at camp when I told the staff, I tell them every training, it's important that as a staff, you're in the Word. And here's how I get in the Word. I do 3 Psalms a day, 1 proverb, and then the gospel. And if I have time, I'll get into something else. And then I actually put myself, this was a challenge for me, I put myself in a public place when I do that. Not to brag, all right, but just to show that this means enough to me that I do it. And then if any summer staff are around that aren't supervising kids, I usually have a question I'll ask them as they pass them by, like, hey, what do you think about this part in the scripture? I'm having trouble understanding this. And we can have a little discussion. But let them know and let them see you do that. A lot of times we want to keep it in our closet. Yeah, pray by yourself, absolutely. But when you're in the Word, it's important. They need to know that what you're doing is important to you. So they need to see you doing these things. Oh, that's backwards. Huh, it's a powerful example. I don't know how to work PowerPoint. So I also don't proofread my slides. So abiding in Christ. So that's what I just talked about, getting in the Word. Mentor relationships for those who need it. Believe it or not, they have students. We have set up mentor programs, and you have students who don't get anything out of it. But some do. Maybe just focus on those and strengths, and maybe small groups. I don't know. But show off your leadership for sure. Oh, look, you get to twice. Provide good examples. So again, I'm just going to cruise through this one because John Maxwell. So what we do as a staff, now that I have 5 year-round staff at camp, and we have 6 staff now, we do the John Maxwell weekly podcast and then talk about it on Mondays at our staff meeting. And he does a lot of parallels to Christ, just so you know. He still is a preacher. And his right-hand man, Mark, is really good. And that's our tool that we use as an example of leadership. So we're diving into leadership every Monday. We dive in and talk about leadership as a team. And then I try to take Ray, who's program director, but now he's leaving, so it's me. We would talk about how to incorporate that into our programs. Because again, I'm not an expert on leadership. I'm learning every day, and this is one of the ways I learn. Patrick Lencioni, great books, by the way. He also does some speaking at leadership conferences. Other church workers, but keep in mind healthy habits. There is a pastor in our area who's not there anymore, who everybody's like, he's such a great pastor, but he's a workaholic. How is that painting a good picture of leadership, right? He's there all the time. He's available all the time. It's like, that's not a good picture. Good picture of leadership has good boundaries, healthy habits. He was in the Word. He did great things, but it's just the disciplined life. And John Maxwell speaks on that too, but leading that disciplined life, having healthy boundaries, being able to say no, knowing your limits, all those things. are pretty good. And then your own local examples. We at FOC, Family of Christ, have some amazing examples of leadership. One of them is J.W. Roth, who owns Boot Barn Hall. He owns like 3 restaurants, and he's expanding his entertainment industry all over the place. And I got to sit down with him at lunch a few weeks ago, and he paid for it, which is even better, at one of his restaurants. And just, I grilled him. I had my list of questions because that's how we learn, is asking questions. And I'm be a lifelong learner. And and he got started. His example of leadership was just like, what's that focus, and just be relentlessly going after it as a leader. He dropped out of high school as a junior, never went to college. Did get his GED eventually, and when he started off as a firefighter. And all of a sudden, he's a multimillionaire. Not that we're going to make multi-millions of dollars, but being a leader, he just relentlessly went after things. And when he hit that moment, there was a moment where he had to go to his wife when he first started his first food distribution business, that he had to say, do we need rent money this month? Because I need to pay my staff. And so that was his rock bottom, but that didn't deter him. So being a part of leaders, understanding that you're going to have those dark days, and how the disciplined life allows us to get through those and navigate those tough days. So he took his rent money, paid his staff, and from there, the next week, he got this huge Safeway contract that they were able to expand their business, and now they're going to be selling off their food distribution business for more money than I can ever imagine. He has a phone call on his son. I'm not bragging about this. I'm just sitting there going, I don't even understand those numbers. And he's like, well, that was my son. He just made a $10 million deal. I'm like, can we have 10% of that? I'm okay if you tithe the LVR. Like, that's like 2 years of our budget, man. And you'll find that those local examples, if you form like a leadership team, they would be happy to come in and talk to students. Another one is John Curtis, he was a huge marketing exec for Alpo dog food, which has many branches like candy, or it was like something. And he was charged with, his CEO went to him and said, we need to make X amount of millions of dollars, and made a bold choice to go buy 3 of their competing companies, and put them underneath the Alpo dog brand or whatever it was. And so he took out the competition and made money from there. It was just an incredible thing. But it's like, what did they do to make those bold moves? And that's a little different story about scaling up your church and things like that. That's a whole nother presentation, maybe next year. But just what does it take to continue to move forward and move up and do those things and not be afraid of failure, But local examples, you have them in your church. You have people in your church who are amazing leaders that would love to pour into students, even if it was just a workshop or an activity. So there we go. There's our own. You get to see that twice. Affirming your young leaders. Acts, the book of Acts, is not about their worship time. It was about them providing the needs of the people around. So they grew their church by caring for people. So affirming young leaders, and caring for people is how we care. I've never grown weary of caring for people in my life. It's only when I have to get away from that I grow tired. That I have to plan something, I have to organize something. But if I'm in the feet with people, I never get tired. So focus on building students into leaders. That's something to brainstorm. What does that look like? We're still going through this one, just so you know, at camp. We have a summer camp program, and what does it look like to have 8-year-olds in your cabin and focusing on building them into leaders? What does it look like to have that many high schoolers? So this is something I'm doing right now. I'm in the process of. We're losing the team member. It's a little harder because he was going to be key in carrying this out, and now I got to I'll find some. God will provide for him and us, so I'm not too worried about it. But now this is me and me. It's not me and the two-headed beast that I call it. It's me coming up to figure out. So I'm brainstorming this as well. Have a party. Did I say that already?
Yeah.
All right. A rave.
It must be important.
Shoot, yeah. I was telling I don't know, I've said this way too many times in the last 4 years, that we just don't party enough. And I'm talking good parties. You know, this out here could be a party, but we all have our little hats of importance. If we took the hats off and threw some music out there, that'd be awesome. So, teach and give them, okay. You're welcome, Jeremy Hetzel. Why I hate Jeremy Hetzel. This is Jeremy Hetzel. You should know that he and I, he's one of my best friends. He, myself, and Dan Hampton, who's the youth leader over at Holy Cross, we try to get together once. It's every Thursday. Sorry. It's not that hard to put it on your calendar. So it's like every other Thursday, really, apparently. But we try to get together every Thursday and just have a lunch together. But one of the things that Jeremy will always bring up is, if you asked him, oh, how did you get through your vacancy? What was the most important thing you did when you went through your vacancy?
Spend time with Jesus every day.
Yep. How long?
Sometimes an hour and a half.
Every day. The vacancy that he went through, with the pastor was forced to resign, who is a good friend of mine also, and a lot of burdens got put on him. Jeremy was doing the preaching. He was doing youth ministries. He was attending meetings, and all of us would go crazy during that time. And that's why I had to hunt him down sometimes in church, was because he was spending his hour and a half in a quiet place in the church to abide with God, pray with God, get in God's Word, and really study God's Word. And this is one of the greatest things I think we can teach. If you walk away with nothing else, this is what you need to walk away from. Am I spending a good time? I gotta tell you, I spend time in God's Word. I really do. But there are days where I just read it, and don't get into it. And so this is where I would start with any leadership, is right here. And I almost hate to admit that, and that's why I hate Jeremy Hetzel, because he's right. But I had to learn that too. All right, and I had to learn that from him. The importance of it. So that's it. As we move forward, that's where we're going to start with our summer camp, is teaching kids how to abide in Christ. And then we'll go from there. So at the end of the day, some of it is still sad. Some of it is still a challenge to you and I. But at the end of the day, it's still the student's choice. All right? The majority of students will fall away, all right? But maybe leadership is a way to do it. Parents, working on parents, those things. You can see that twice.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Just because we already talked about
Yeah.
helping to connect your college student or the person leaving town to a campus ministry
Yep.
on their college campus.
Yeah, campus ministries can be a huge influence if they can stay connected. And it's really with college, so talking to my buddies, talking to some college students, really what keeps them in their faith is, who do they go to when they have the big questions? Who are they, when they have the big questions of, is evolution real? There's so much evidence out there. Or, you know what, if God's so good, or the question that hit me personally was, if I do things right all the time, why do bad things happen? I've been told I do things right, and this bad thing happened. And that was one of my personal struggles this last year. And so, who am I going to for that question? And how is that question being asked? Is it being asked out of a position of trust of God, or is it being asked out of a position of doubt in God? And those two things are pretty hidden. So, when someone comes to me with a question of, why do bad things happen? My first question back is, are you asking this question because you're doubting God right now, or are you asking this question because you have trust in God? Because you see the two different answers, and then tell me more either way. And asking a question back helps me learn more about how God might help respond, because I'm lost at those questions sometimes. We all know the answer is sin in the world, but when I had the question of, we had an issue at camp this summer, and I was told I did everything right. And so then I went into this dark road in August of, if I did everything right, why does this bad thing still happen? And I was out of a position of trust in God. And so out of that position of trust, I was able to hear. But if you had told me, well, it's sin in the world, keep the hope, keep the faith, that's crap. You know, it was people who in my life who said, really tell me what's going on, and I was able to share. So the standard answer, unfortunately, doesn't work anymore. In fact, it turns more people away when we say, well, it's because of sin in the world, and we know that's true. So back to this. This is me and my wife and my 4 kids. Attitude towards church and confirmation. Our attitude towards church is important, but not necessarily for worship. Sorry. It's important because that's the people who love us and love on us and encourage us, the people we can go to. It's our community. I can worship anywhere. I can, but I don't have this community all the time. And if that change can happen in our hearts and minds, that we need to be part of this community because this is where our support, love, encouragement comes from, that'd be huge. But our focus a lot of times is on worship, and we argue about worship, but ultimately it's the people. And then confirmation. We talked about the best way to start leadership is teaching kids to abide. Confirmation are the 2 years in our world that parents force their kids to come, right? My family's a little different. We looked at our kids, and all 4 of them, of course Bodhi's 5, and we said, we could care less if you get confirmed. Confirmation to me means nothing. What means something is we want you to stay in your faith. So if confirmation is what you want to do, fine. We don't care, but we'll commit to getting you there, not going to class like Jeremy requires. But and so far, our 3 oldest ones have chosen to be confirmed. And then what I believe that's led them to do is then I was able to say, you're going. And then with the mission trips, my oldest is one of his main leaders now, that he's learning leadership from Jeremy, and which is amazing. I love it, but he's choosing it and chose it all along the way. And I think that environment worked for us. It wouldn't work for a lot of families, but I'm just letting you know my own attitude is confirmation, the way we've done it traditionally, has no bearing on whether or not a kid stays in their faith. And so to me, that means if it's not having any bearing, let's call it what it is. It's great education. It's wonderful. But it's just with that perspective, hopefully it'll change. And then in confirmation, we can do some leadership rather than that. Have to find ways for youth to engage and not just consume at the table. This is actually from a conversation last night with some of you all of youth to engage in leadership and not just go to the table and consume what youth group has, and then I'm full for a sec, maybe a little upset stomach, I go home, I'm done, So, and I put even though I'm not sure how to do this. How about that? All right. Oh, you get to see that twice. Beyond high school. There's your college.
There you go.
Yep. Our campus ministries, the Lutheran campus ministries in Colorado, are not great. And what that means is conversations with the campus ministries we have there we're just here to serve the Lutherans on the campus. And so I said, how many Lutherans are there then in CU Boulder? Apparently 2. Which you and I both know is not true. So, and so I have a hard time promoting our campus ministries, and so I have other contacts in campuses with the Lutheran folks. But that's a problem with our district. I hope anyway. And then so beyond high school. So like I said, who's the answer person? I had a conversation with a pastor a long time ago. And we were walking from the dining hall up to Moose Manor. He was getting ready to lead a session. And he said something in his sessions that bugged me, so I have no problem questioning him on it. And the question was, it was an absolute, which I agree with that absolute he was saying, but the way he said it meant don't question it, don't do a thing about it, boom, this is it, done, over, And it wasn't anything I questioned, but the way he presented it said, don't even ask me about it. And so on the way in between the 2 buildings, I said, so the way you said that led me to believe that you really don't want kids questioning what you just said. And I don't think that's a good thing. And then he goes, Well, they're always open to come in. I have my door open. They can question any time. And then I go, how many years have you been doing ministry? He says, 25. How many kids have come through your door? And he goes, 1. And I go, maybe that's a problem. He never came back to LVR. So it's that part of being in leadership. I think one of the things about focusing on leadership is, for me, I have 3 people who I will speak to on leadership items, and they know my struggles. Jeremy's one of them. They know my. I don't tell anyone else a lot of things I struggle with, and for you as a leader, find those 3. And it's the reason 3 is because they all have different opinions. There are 3 people who tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear, and so that's part of the focus on, check yourself first. And so when you talk about student leadership, who's the 3 that you could pour in, who could pour into students? Who's the 3 they can go to confidentially and deal with some issues? Because we do have some major issues. If you guys have never doubted your ministry, then I doubt that you're a leader. Or second guessed everything you've done. Then probably, So that's the end of the PowerPoint. Look at that. Except my point here too is I am learning. So tell me about how you believe leadership, focusing on leadership could help what you guys got going on. And this is where I get to sit down because I hate standing. Nice.
Can you repeat your question?
Oh, yeah. I should have wrote it down, shouldn't I? Because I forgot it. What do you think about leadership? How could it help? What are your concerns? What are your... what can I help you with today? Yeah.
What advice would you give to kids on how to be better leaders?
And when a question is asked, if I have a pause, that's when the rest of you need to intervene. Do you have a specific kid in mind?
Those 2.
Okay. Nice. So go back to the principle of the first statement. That's where I go to is leaders don't just do the best themselves, but bring the best out of everybody else. So check yourself, but in the meantime, you don't have to be perfect to help out others. So if you have a specific person in mind who you're leading or being with, who can you bring? How can you bring the best out of this person next to you? How can I bring the best out? And that gets in the whole servant leadership as well. Because as a leader, then me are concerned about this other person's faith and them not falling away as well. So what needs to happen, to walk with. Any other thoughts on that? That was a good question.
I would say work to learn different things that you are skilled at. He was talking about strengths, but just learn how you're wired. There's different books out there that help you learn what your spiritual gifts are, how you're wired for leadership, some just different things. So the more you know about yourself, then you can learn to lead from those strengths, and you can avoid putting yourself in situations. If someone says, if you're really gifted at details and administrative stuff, and someone says, hey, would you lead the Bible study up front this week? It's going to do more damage to you because you're going to be like, oh, I'm not a leader. Whereas if you go, I understand how I'm wired, this is a better fit for me, then you can serve in that way, and I think it gives confidence instead of tearing down.
That's fantastic.
At camp, have you seen, you've been there 18 years, so have you seen strengths in young people, high school students as a whole, generally speaking, change in 18 years? What was the strength coming out of that generation 18 years ago? Is it different, the same?
Yeah, very much so. And I think a lot of it has to do with what we've gone through recently as a country. Apathy, and then also social isolation has led to some extreme behaviors. And so, whereas the change, I don't know, just in the beginning, it seemed like the high school ministries, we tended, they were just bold, you know, kind of what you expect a high school kid to be. Now you have personality styles in this too that come out. You got the driver who just always jumps ahead first. You have the analyzer who are sitting back thinking about the best way and how the driver's wrong. You have the the amiable who just wants everybody to be happy, and you have the expressive who just will tell you what they think no matter what. And those 4 personality styles tend to be in every group. But the leadership of those styles is interesting. But since COVID and how the change, it's been even the drivers have been subdued. The kids who used to jump up at first are just that social isolation that the teenagers are going through, and you guys are on the front line. You guys deal with it more. And the camp, the way it manifests itself is through extreme behaviors, like not knowing how to be around a crowd and running around a little louder, not being able to listen anymore because I'm so excited to be around people. And so, we were able, a lot of camps we were able to warn the schools when they started classes in the fall of what kids were going to be like. So yeah, there's been a lot of changes. The thought of, don't be afraid of failure is wonderful. Yet, I grew up in a generation where my failures weren't recorded. And on the internet for the rest of the life. A good friend of mine who's down in Oklahoma, he's a counselor, he was telling me about a girl he was working with who, in the old days of the internet, sent, it was a bad mistake, sent a topless photo to her boyfriend, and then that photo went up into the Google search world, and people could search her name, and that popped up. So the rest of her life, that if they searched that picture, and that's something that I'm like, holy crap. So the thing is, the fear of failure, the fear of mistakes, where we've always tried to trump that and get out of that, everything's recorded. And how many times, have you guys had to say this in youth ministry? We're like, hey, turn your phones off. Please don't record this. I might have said that way too much at our winter retreat this year with Matt Walton. With Matt Walton from St. John's, yeah. Hey, can you guys not record this? Why not? But so I think there's so many, it's not just one thing, and I always want to summarize and have one thing, but it's like, no, there's a lot of things going on in kids' lives that's different from when I was their age. My mistakes, no one ever knew, except the dudes that were in the back of the truck with me, So, and their mistakes are being recorded. And I'm watching the impression that I have everybody else's life from a two and a half, like one photo. Like if they're smiling, having a good time, I think their life's fantastic. My life sucks, And I don't know how that it changes a lot. And it's incredible. Did I answer your question, or did I skirt around long enough that you forgot what it was? No. So yeah, big differences. Apathy, fear of failure is big time, has grown. In the college world, with the students we lead, who we try to turn into leaders for summer staff, it's the increased amount of depression and anxiety, and I'm sure that's filtering down the high school realm, and that has caused all sorts of things. And some of it's legit, some of it is, hey, we go not understanding, and I think that's important to coach and leaders, is we have seasons of down, we have seasons of up. Just because you're down doesn't mean you're depressed, it just means you're having a hard time. And then when you're up, doesn't mean you're having an extreme, it just means, hey, let's party. When you're down, we have those seasons, and we're trying to tell kids that when you're down now, you shouldn't be there. You shouldn't mourn about the mistake. You shouldn't be mad or upset. And so it's the giving them permission to sit in sadness. And being like, it's okay to be sad right now. Let's go punch a hole in a wall somewhere. Let's go throw a rock down a hill. Or what's a better thing than punching a hole in a wall? I don't know. But somebody to walk with them on those times is pretty huge. And then when I screw up, and the teenagers, when they screw up, if there's ever a thought that they're alone, it's that social isolation gets even worse. And so how do you, and the thing of Jesus is always there is great, but we are the hands and feet of Jesus. So telling them that Jesus is right next to you probably won't help. So, but if somebody's there saying just what's going on, asking questions, tell me more. So yeah, the social isolation is huge. And apathy. Failure, mistakes, big changes. Great question.
I'm a little slow, but I want to answer your question.
Oh yeah.
With leaders, with kids, to do the I do, you watch, we talk about, then we do, then we talk about, and then you do, and we talk about it, rather than
The square.
sometimes throwing them in there, and I think we're big on doing that as a church, Want to be an usher? Okay, you're an ushering this Sunday,
Yeah.
and then there's everybody on the sidelines heckling them,
You're not doing it right.
Yeah.
Great, you just killed the kid.
Yeah, you got to train people how to do
Yeah.
it so they're successful.
Right. That's good. That's good. Anything else? Questions? Comments? I'm learning. What do you guys? What I appropriately would have been like? Well, what do you think?
About how to be
You're
good
good.
leaders.
Yeah.
I like your point of how a good leader does what they can to make themselves the best, but to make other people the best too.
Mm.
I hadn't thought about that before, but that's really good.
I don't know where I came up. That just popped in my head one day. I'm pretty sure somebody told me and I stole it from somebody. It's probably copyrighted somewhere, but I don't really care. Just change one word, then we're all right.
Totally fine.
Use it. Own it. Yeah.
How do you approach talk with kids that they claim that they want to be leaders, but they don't really show a whole lot of initiative? How do you get across to them like your desire to be a leader? Think, cool, that we can work with this, but like there needs to be some sort of you got to do something. You can't be lip service.
Right. That's like the kid in the weight room. He's like, yeah, I could bench 200 pounds. And then he can't do over 90. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Any thoughts on that?
I think some of the questions I would ask would be, what's your motive for wanting to be a leader?
Put back on them a bit.
Because I think sometimes kids want to be leaders just because of the social standing, and then so there's got to be some level of intrinsic motivation for them to want to pursue that. And I would say, if you have the opportunity to, hey, why do you want to be a leader? Or if you have some type of process where there's an application and they fill it out, and then you get a chance to sit down with them and say, hey, I saw you wanted to be a leader, here's this and this, why are you interested? And if they're just showing that they're not engaging, right? They've said, I want to do it, but I'm not stepping up, then having conversations and find out what's holding you back, how can I help with that? And if it's just motivation, then what motivates you?
I think of that servant leadership you were talking about, okay, you want to be a leader? All right, well, at this event, we need people taking out the trash. Do it with me.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if you're not willing to get your hands dirty, if you're not willing to do the behind-the-scenes stuff, let's kind of walk that road first. This is why we do that. And then we'll get to the point where we get in front of people.
An interesting test that I do at camp that some of the staff hate is I'll plant trash around camp and see who picks it up without being asked. And that usually the ones who do are ones who I pick for leadership. It seems so stupid, but it's
It's just a level of care.
yeah. There's
Everything's an
something
interview.
there. Yeah, everything's an interview. Wade's been around LVR enough that staff will be doing something, they'll screw up, and I just go, hey, everything's an interview, and they all go, oh. Yeah. To your point, and so strengths again, right? Is that what are they? Are you asking them to do something that's out of their wheelhouse too? But Jeremy's point is very good. Ask questions, and put it back on them. Because otherwise, have you had that situation then?
Yeah, the one kid, I run a gap group program.
Okay.
One kid this past year that, the kid kept saying, I feel called to go into ministry, and particularly pastoral ministry roles. Which, cool, let's dig into that. And just every time that kept asking, starting to find, where's the initiative coming from? It was like, well, you know, everything else, kind of like to your point, like all the take on the trash desire wasn't really there, or like anytime that we were like, let's do it with you. That's like ministry opportunities getting in front of people. Ministry opportunities did not qualify. It's just, you know, picking up around side or helping them do the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
And so how do you communicate to him like, this is a part of it too? If anything, it's the good majority of it. You know, and no one's gonna listen to you if you're up in front of people if you're not doing any of the behind the scenes stuff too. You know?
So yeah, starting with the questions is pretty big, because if he can realize that, rather than you telling him, you know, then you won't be beating your head against the wall about him. Yeah. In September 30th, 1992, I was a sophomore in high school, and I was playing varsity, and the offensive line coach caught me on my way out, and he had a conversation with me that I'll never forget, and maybe this could help you. And I just remember that conversation, and we went to a brick wall, and he pointed out the mortar between the bricks. He says, "Steve, you're playing here. You can play here, and we need you to get to the here so you can play to here." And he held me to account about my work ethic and everything, you know, and he just kind of used the wall. It was one of the craziest things and he didn't yell, which is one of the first times I heard this coach not yell. But I'll never forget that conversation in the gym in my high school, that he challenged me to be better at that point in time. And it was through poor leadership in my high school years that I realized that I was doing the best myself, but I wasn't bringing out the best of others around me. And then through college as well. It took me a long time to understand that. So asking the questions, and then eventually there has to be a moment of truth. You know, and I've found the more times I've talked to someone hardcore and sat them down, the more they've come back a couple years later and were appreciative of it, even though it's hard for me too. Because we love kids that show up, right? And we don't want to deter them, but, you know. Yep. So, good. Other questions, thoughts? I find that you guys are all more expert at it than I am, so, you know. My son Joe, if not, I'll just keep telling stories. My son Joe is the one kid who actually will do the 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups and 30 pull-ups a day, even though he's playing basketball. He's not a yell leader. He's not a rah-rah go leader of the basketball team. As a freshman, he got invited to practice with the varsity since the season's over. Because all of his coaches came to me and they're like, hey, his leadership style is, he just, boom, the team goes as he goes. He plays hard, works hard all the time. The team does. If he has an off day, the team has an off day. And he's owned it all. But he will never admit that he's a leader. And he's the kid that wakes up. He wakes up, he has his routine. Thanks to Jeremy, he goes and reads his Bible in the morning. That's because of Jeremy, and a little bit about me, because I do in the morning. He sees me doing it too. And then he goes to the laundry, grabs the rags, folds them up, put them in the drawer. He'll go to his room, he'll study, and then he gets ready for the day. And then throughout the day, he'll do his push-ups, sit-ups, and pull-ups. And he's very disciplined. But even him, in his discipline now at this age, he can still lose that if it's not encouraged, and if it's not, in college, he can still lose that. Yeah. Yeah.
What's your perspective on, because I've seen two kind of methods of developing students as leaders. One is more like one-on-one, intentional kind of like conversations and taking like a mentor role. And the other is is, hey, we set up this program. This is our leadership team. We're doing training with this group, etc. Do you have thoughts on one or the other being better, or what you do at camp, or?
So because see, this is where I go. Shut up, Steve. What do you think? So at camp we have our basic leadership trainings that we do with camp and our staff, and then it's a lot of one-on-one coaching throughout the summer. Yeah, a lot of both. And the coaching lets them know that I'm watching, and then it is the constant just here. I really like what you did well, and then here's how you can improve. But ultimately, letting them come up with that and grilling them, and specifically when we get into challenge course and team building, what did you do well? What can you improve on? And then here's what I saw, and then the coaching aspects of leadership is if I see something that needs correction, say something, don't wait. So, of course, we had doing it. I live in a world where if they screw up, people get hurt or killed. So, if they're screwing up in something, then I've got a habit of just walk up to them, quietly say something. The only time I yell at staff is dealing with anything safety issues. So it's a combination of both. I've had, right now I'm working with a gentleman who, he asked a buzzword question to me that just set me off, which was, I just don't have any direction in my life. And I go, whoa, let's talk. All right. And so I'm going to try to meet with him one-on-one. So, but when it comes to this, summer staff, I have to do the general teaching and then coaching.
In a church setting, I almost think it's beneficial to do it the opposite. You're watching, you're seeing which kids, you're having those conversations of which kids that you invite up to leadership training. That's how I see it. But
A long time ago, I did that, and then I'd choose 5 or so to go through it quarterly. I'd do a leadership training, long time ago, based off the book of Nehemiah. And I was so young then. It was 20-some years ago, and I'd do it differently now, but there's merit in that too, finding the ones that kind of stand out. Again, the purpose is leadership as a way to hopefully keep kids in their faith. That's the main goal, and I don't want to lose that goal. If I have a great leader, but if they walk away from their faith, I've failed too, so that's the main goal for me. And using leadership as one of the many tools we have, knowing the parents are really the big ones. And then there might be something there with them, but yeah, great.
So the answer is all the above.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, I'm saying because the people that you've hired full-time year-round are developed within.
Yeah, that's true. Good. Any other questions? I love talking leadership. Like I said, I'm learning more and more. Actually LVR has hired a leadership coach for me. And that's one of the things that has pushed me to be even better. And I meet with him once a month. And so if you're at a spot in your own leadership where you're kind of like, oh man, I just don't know what the next step is, find a leadership coach. They're super good, man. Super good. It's not counseling, but it sure seems like it. It's a lot cheaper too. It's less than $100 a session usually. And leadership coach has helped me just see a bigger picture, but also kind of helped me fill in details. And the leadership coach. So most recently, I told you Ray's leaving, who's my program director, been with me for 5 years. I'm super sad. And so if anybody needs looking for a program director position, just saying. But he talked to me about that. This is what a leadership coach does. He asked me questions like, well, how are you going to cover the position? And I said, well, for now, I'll have to do it until we get somebody that. And then he looks dead up at me and says, well, what are you going to give up then? And who in your life is asking you, what are you going to give up? And some of the teenagers too, the overload of some of them, need to hear that. Well, that sounds like an awful lot. If you want to be a leader here, what are you going to give up? And because again, we oftentimes in church and camp is like, I'll take a volunteer for however long they'll volunteer. I'll kill them in the process, you know. But not being realistic of what are you going to give up. So that's one of the biggest suggestions I would say is a leadership coach has been one of the best decisions that someone helped me make. So in the last 3 years. So. And he's part of the that's why I quote John Maxwell, because he's part of the John Maxwell School. And I go, hey Tom, what kind of book you got that I can read? And I'm not a book reader, but he always has a book for me to read too. So yeah, I'm not what you call a reader. Yeah.
Yeah, that leads me to a question I was going to ask you. Is there, for starting like a process of developing leaders, so I got probably a group of 4 that they're part of our board of youth. And,
That's awesome.
Kind of engaging them into the decisions of what happens in youth group and even for the rest of the church. But is there like a Bible study or a book that we could go through with our meetings to kind of start in that leadership process?
There are lots of books.
Any that you would recommend?
Yeah. So Patrick Lencioni, Ideal Team Player, and then John Maxwell has the 17 laws of 17 something of team player, which is pretty good. But I like how Patrick Lencioni writes. He writes with story based, fictional, and it's a real easy read, easy stuff to talk about. His other one is 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. That one's really good. Both of those, because that one I would suggest more than the Ideal Team Player. Both of them are great. 5 Dysfunctions of the Team are that one. It actually talks more about strengths, and living in your wheelhouse of strengths. If it's not your strength, change. And then we were going through another one, but those are the two big ones. Ideal Team Player and 5 Dysfunctions of a Team are really good. Patrick Lencioni. And then after that, you can come back and get more. Bible study wise, they're all over the place Bible study wise, and they shy away from a lot of times being a leader. So the thing about Patrick Lencioni is, he'll have a whole story, a fictional story that'll take up 3/4 of the book, and then he'll have 1/4 of the book be application. And so you could easily write your own off of that. It's pretty simple. Yeah.
I've used Leader Treks.
I didn't put that up there. That's the other reason why I hate Jeremy Hetzel.
We talk about Leader Treks
all the time. But just so you know, because of Jeremy Hetzel, speaking of Leader Treks, I started looking into their stuff, and I said we need to change things at LVR because they're doing some really cool stuff.
But Leader Treks has a book called Student Leaders Start Here, which is some of the know yourself stuff, like what are my spiritual gifts. So they have some Bible studies that are incorporated in that book. So that would be something to look at. But then they have a bunch of curriculum and other stuff.
And they do it in a way that students will easily catch on to.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I knew you'd mention that.
Could help.
You're just waiting for the time.
I've used the Kindle stuff with high school kids.
Kindle?
They have the books here if you want to buy one.
Oh, nice. Did you ever?
Okay, so as a leader, training other leaders, sometimes I find, I'm sure like other people feel this way, you're like going this way, and then you're like, oh, I want to go this way, or I want to go this way, and soon you're like, da-da-da-da-da. What do you do when you get to that point? Because there's so many options and possibilities.
Great question. And so one of the books I read a while ago, The One Thing by, I don't remember who it is. It's not a Christian book, but he laid out like 3 things. Like the one thing is, what's that one thing? Really find that laser focus. What's that one thing you're going to focus on? And it's then from there you form your purpose, priorities, and profit. And yeah, we don't talk about profit in church ministry, but it doesn't have to be money. And so, that one thing, and getting to keeping that laser focus. And so the reason I bounce from here to here to here to here, a lot of times because I haven't taken the time to do the really action. So I'm like, oh, this is a great idea, and then don't do anything with it. And then I bounce over here and bounce over here. But it's the idea is like the focus of leadership development in our camp. That's the one thing. And then now I'm going through the purpose, how we're going to do the purpose of it, the priorities, and then what's going to be the profit that we're going to see. And so letting those, the priorities then be my accountability for action. Does that help? And so in leadership then, your goal may not be to develop leaders. It might just be a littler goal too, and recognize those little goals you want to do. And taking that framework has really helped me, for sure. So I want to develop a new way to do whatever, and it's like that's my one thing I'm focusing on, and here's the purpose, the priorities, and then we'll see the profits.
And I would add to that, have a group of people, whether it's a leadership team or something else, that you talk that through with, where you say, hey, we want to start this program, we want to develop leaders in this way, does this make sense? Have a group of people that can give you feedback on a regular basis as you're thinking through these ideas, so that some of them can get implemented and you as a group can kind of go, this is what makes sense.
Yeah.
And sort through all that.
So are you asking the question because is a lot of little goals you're bouncing from, or is it like big goals, or is it like?
Well, it's like the DCE mix of like,
Oh.
there's endless possibilities
Okay.
of what we can get our hands into.
Yeah. Okay. And then having that, so you get the endless mix of possibilities, and it's like, and so the focus becomes really hard. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
And then, so in that respect, so the endless possibilities in like one facet of your job description, or like you have multiple things you're doing?
So I guess like that's how my brain works. I feel like it's everything.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, that's not terrible, because that just leads to that also. The caution then is if you can't laser focus, and the caution then is we dive into that not being able to discipline our lives very well, and so then the abiding gets harder. The time at home gets harder. Feeling guilty for taking time off happens, and you can just go down this other road. And so sometimes I have to think of the dangers that keeps me away from the unhealthy habits. So yeah, finding that laser focus. And so what's one example of one of the rabbit holes you go down on in your head?
Probably student leadership.
Okay.
Or I guess like youth ministry in general. Like, can we do leadership programs, or can we do, like, when do we do our fun nights, or when do we do our service nights, and like, oh, when am I training the leaders? We almost like establish a youth ministry program for our leaders.
So what you're saying is, instead of helping you, I just added more things in your brain. Oh man, that sounds. Yeah, so you're going down, and I think like, so then to kind of hone it in, then the leadership training and focus, it'll actually getting that will actually filter into those other areas. So hey, when do we do a game night? Well, it's up to your student leaders. Hey, we need a party. We need to have a rave. In the sanctuary, because they have the best subwoofer.
So how would you
Have a rave?
Like, how would you
Oh.
plan a rave?
Oh. First of all,
Finally.
I know. First of all, you don't tell anybody that it's a rave. Then we get some cool lighting. Actually, most churches now have the cool lighting. And then don't break the drum set. How would you have a rave? Or you could do the silent rave where everyone brings their AirPods, and yeah, it ain't right.
Well, but if they're all dancing to their own thing, just,
There you go. That's right. She asked about a rave. Yeah. And And but I mean, again, what's the purpose of it? And again, that's why I like the purpose priorities prophet, because it really adds it. It just brings me organization, making sure I have a good purpose. And so if it is to celebrate something, hey, we're gonna do this service to the community, or your student leadership say, hey, we want to serve the community. That's the one thing they're focused on, and you go, well, what are the priorities of the community? What are the needs? And then what's the action steps? And help them walking along through. Problem with DCEs is we already have a plan in our head. Our youth workers, and if they don't get that plan, then I make it happen, rather than me just letting go and saying it's up to you guys, and just holding them accountable to deadlines as well. But it's not always about projects, right? It's not always about projects. I want to be clear on that too. It's about keeping kids in their faith. So yeah, keeping that organized. And if you want to have a rave, what's the purpose? If it's simply a party, awesome. Raves aren't terrible to everybody. All right, it's not bad. They just don't like it when you have the neon paint and cover all the lights with black lights. They just don't like that in a church. So find your space in a church where you can do that, and then rave on. So anyway, that's all. Thanks for asking about a rave, by the way. That just made my day. Any other questions? Did I answer your question? To help? Kinda?
It helps.
Okay. We could talk more too. I don't mind.